In the midnight glow where the stars align, we lose ourselves in the rhythm divine. Underneath the sky painted with dreams we're chasing.
Welcome to episode 8. I'm Jody.
And I'm Mari.
And today we're going to talk about the 8 phases of the moon and how to work with them.
So let's talk briefly about what the moon represents. We've gone over all the planets, so we did touch on this in our planets episode. For those of you who need a refresher, the moon is our emotional self. It's our internal world. It rules Cancer, a water sign. Water signs are all about emotion and subconscious, intuition, those types of things. It's very kind of that feminine energy of intuition, emotion. It's very flowing. As we're talking about the moon, be thinking about the archetype of what the moon is representing in your life as we go. Moving through these 8 phases, you can track the moon throughout the month as it moves through your chart through these phases. It can be a very illuminating around what's happening internally for you.
Yes, the moon reminds us that life has cycles. So I think that's a key point for tracking the moon because everything is cycles and patterns. Each phase has its own rhythm, its own lesson, its own energy. And we can harness and use that to our advantage. So then we don't get stressed out about it.
That's so beautifully put, because these things are subtle often in our lives. And we tend to be in such a masculine, and when I say masculine, I just mean like a driving, forward moving, instead of receptive, it is aggressive sort of society, which is you just push through. If you're kind of in a phase that doesn't want to be as productive, or you're kind of in like germinating, you might not feel like getting everything done on your list today. Our society just says push through and do it anyway. If you tap more into the intuitive side of yourself and following these phases, it really gives permission and it makes a lot of sense for the natural ebb and flow of life. We need moments of rest and then we need moments of action. So following the moon through your chart or understanding the phases of the moon can really shine light on that.
Yes. All right, the first phase would be the new moon phase, which is like the beginning or the planting of the seeds. It's a fresh start. The sky is dark. There is nothing illuminating. It's quiet. It's still. It's a good time for us to plant those seeds and set those intentions and really imagine what's possible.
And there's a lot of clarity around the new moon because our emotions tend to be the most heightened around a full moon. That's something that you've probably noticed. Ask anyone who works in an ER and they'll tell you there is something to the full moon and kind of extreme things happen. People's emotions are heightened around that time. And so the new moon, you have this quiet moment, almost like in the womb where it's dark, it's quiet. It's the seed being planted underneath the earth in the darkness. And there's a clarity there. There's a calm and a clarity there, which is a great time to set intentions.
Yes. And I think so much focus is on the full moon, but actually the new moon is just as special.
Absolutely.
Looking at using the new moon and taking the high road, you would want to rest, be still, go inward and listen, and really focus on what your intentions are going forward. What can happen during this phase if you're on a low road would be forcing things before they're ready, setting vague or unrealistic goals, or ignoring that inner guidance.
Yeah. And during the new moon, I really like to do journaling, or sometimes I'll have a few questions and then I'll pull some cards, either from an oracle deck or tarot around those questions. Some journal prompts might be, what seed am I planting in this area of my life? And what is my soul calling in around this sign or house? So that would be looking at your chart, seeing where the moon is, what sign it is currently in, transiting. This is transiting. And what house it's in. And that's kind of the area of focus for those seeds planted. It gives you another layer to look at. You don't have to go that deep with it. You could just know that it's the new moon and just on a generic level, what am I planting right now? What are my intentions? But if you'd like to layer it, you do a basic Google search for, what sign the moon is in at this point. There's a lot of apps that you can do that have your natal chart, and then it'll show you transits, websites, etc. And we'll try to link some of those for for you in the show notes so that you can see where the moon is currently in your chart and what house and what sign. And that can give you more for these intention settings.
Yeah, definitely adds another layer. Some tips would be to, like Mari had mentioned, set your intentions, your goals, but try to keep them simple and achievable because it feels less pressure on ourselves. And you could do some visualizing, journaling. We talked about moon baths before. Those can be taken, just some self-care during that time.
Yeah, definitely. I love the advice of keeping it simple and achievable, specifically because you really are, it's a 2-week phase from here to the new moon. So that's not a lot of time. We're looking at short-term goals, into the culmination point being the full moon. And then you kind of are letting go and sort of preparing for the next, but it's a pretty short time. So yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I just wanted to make sure that we touched on the degrees, just so if you are actually calculating in the chart or if you're trying to understand the breakdown of when does this phase end and when does the next one start, we are cutting the 360-degree wheel into 8 pie slices. So those are 45 degrees each. So from 0 degrees, when the sun and the moon are exactly aligned in the chart, that's the new moon. From 0 to 45 degrees, that's the new moon phase. And on from there in 45-degree increments, that shows you where the phases switch.
Okay, the next phase is the waxing crescent, which is all about momentum. So this is the first sliver of light that appears. The energy begins to build. This is the hopeful and optimistic phase. So you can really harness that. Take small steps. Keep the faith, build trust in your vision. Some low road things that may show up in this phase could be doubt, procrastination, or giving up too quickly when you're not seeing results. So some tips would be to affirm your daily intentions, do one small action each day that aligns with your goals. Think of it like watering the seed that you planted. It's just not sprouting yet.
That is the perfect time to step out on the path that you have set for yourself, right? You're taking those first steps on your path towards those goals. And that is like the sprout just coming up. And that is from 45 to 90 degrees. That is the phase of the waxing crescent.
So next we have the first quarter phase, which is all about action and also challenges. Half the moon is lit, half shadow, half light. So that is the action point of the cycle. This is where challenges test our commitments. High road for this would be courage, problem solving, and being adaptable, meeting resistance with resilience. So be ready for it and ready to make those adjustments. Some things that might pop up if you're on the low road of this phase would be frustration, impatience, abandoning your goals, or being too rigid with your goals. Some tips during this phase would be to look at what obstacles are showing up. They're not signs to quit, but intentions to grow. Break challenges into smaller steps. And then, of course, ask for support.
And you might be wondering why the challenge? Why is the challenge showing up right now? Well, because if you remember, 90 degrees is a square. And a square, if you listen to our aspects episode, is really a tension point. So that's why when we're from 90 to 135 degrees, the first quarter, sometimes, especially in the early part of that, you might hit a road bump or a challenge because there's that tension point. But from 90 to 35, well, then we also hit the trine. So kind of on the back end of this, the trine, now we're going to kind of slip back into flowing energy again. And just to give you a frame of reference on how long it takes for these phases to move, you're looking at about 3.5 to 4 days for each phase. And there are times when the moon is moving a little faster and the moon is moving a little slower. The slowest it moves is about 11 degrees per day. The fastest it moves is about 15 degrees per day.
Next, we have our waxing gibbous moon, and this is all about refinement or adjustment, making adjustments where they're needed. During the waxing gibbous, the moon is almost full, so the energy is high, but it's time to do any refining or polishing or any improving that you want to make to your goals or your intentions. The high road of this energy would be patience, perseverance, and making adjustments. Some things you might be feeling on the low road would be perfectionism, micromanaging, working too hard, without balancing. Some tips would be to just go back and review your progress. Ask yourself what's working and what isn't working, and make those gentle course corrections when needed, and just trust the big reveal is coming. All right, next we have the full moon, which is all about illumination and release. The full moon, again, is what I think we hear about the most. It's when the moon is the brightest in the sky. Things come to light. Emotions are definitely heightened. High road things to do during a full moon would be celebrating, releasing anything you want to release. Great practice to do is write it down and then burn it in a safe place.
or bury it if that works better. If
Right.
fire is a hazard.
Put it in paper, whip it up and flush it down your toilet.
There you go.
And then also forgiveness, just release it. That's why writing it down is a great way to, feel like you're expressing it, and then forgive and move on from that, and then give thanks to the opportunities. The low road that could show up during this time would be overreactions, drama, emotional burnout, or being swept away by others' energies, because everybody's energy can get a little bit crazy during the full moon. Luna is the moon, and the word lunatic
Good point. Good point.
comes from. Yeah. So Rick Levine always says, moon is for moody.
I like that.
I was like, oh, I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Some other tips for embracing the full moon is coming up with a ritual. Again, writing down or whatever works for you, burying it, burning it, celebrating your wins, journaling, and practice gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Remind us to be grateful for the good things that are happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the lunatic reference. And you can kind of see in mythology too, how the moon is associated with, we think about werewolves and the full moon. And, there's all these sort of archetypal mythological things around the new moon, which that stuff has showed up for a reason, right? Because people start to get a little crazy around the full moon. But in a real practical sense with this, the full moon, you're seeing the fruits of the seed that you planted at the new moon. And why we talk about release, letting go, gratitude, and being gentle with yourself is because what if you get to the full moon and you planted these seeds and you just didn't have the time to accomplish whatever it is you set out to do or whatever? It could be very easy to be judgmental of yourself if you quote unquote failed what your goal was at the new moon. But that's really not what it's about, right? It's about being grateful for everything that over the past couple of weeks that you've gone through, and releasing any judgment on yourself around what you have or haven't done. And the celebratory part would be, if you really have accomplished that thing, congratulate yourself. But it's not a I did good or I did bad moment. It's just a point to stop and reflect and be grateful for all that is. And then that you can do better next time if you didn't accomplish what it is you set out to do, because life isn't always that cute and tied with a bow. It just isn't.
Right. Next, we have the waning gibbous, which is all about gratitude and sharing.
And this can also be called the disseminating moon, in case you run into that. There's a couple different phrases that people use for this. So
this phase of the moon is when the moon is starting to wane, but it's still pretty bright. This is the teacher phase, integrating lessons and sharing wisdom. A high road to this phase would be gratitude, generosity, service, reflection. So the low road of this phase could be overgiving yourself, ignoring your own needs, and feeling depleted. Some tips on harnessing this are share what you've learned, teach, mentor, or simply, again, express gratitude to those people who support you. This is about giving back and acknowledging the harvest of the cycle. Next, we have the last quarter moon. This is reevaluation and some release. The moon is half lit again, but now it's decreasing. This is a crossroads, a time to decide what stays and what goes. So the high road for this would be honest self-reflection, tying up loose ends, and clearing your space. Some low road things that you might notice during this time would be clinging to what no longer works. I've been there. Guilt, blame, or resistance to change. Some tips for this phase would be to reflect. So did my intention bloom the way I expected it to? What do I need to release before the next cycle begins? This is the perfect time to declutter, forgive, or finish up any projects. Next, we have the waning crescent or the balsamic moon, which is rest and surrender. During this moon phase, the final sliver of light fades. The moon is now retreating, so energy is low, calling us to go inward. During this time, rest, retreat, surrender, spiritual renewal. This is a great time to do that self-care. Some low road energies you might feel is avoidance, escapism, depression, or refusing to slow down. So some tips are to prioritize rest. Meditation is great. Journaling, spend time in quiet reflection, and release old cycles. And then remembering gratitude. This is like a deep exhale before the new moon inhale, because now we just go right back into the same cycle, starting with the new moon.
Yes. And this is a time where you are very in tune and sensitive to your psychic abilities, your intuition. Those things really come on board during this time. So it's a great time for dream work, meditation, visualization, a sound bath, something like that, because you're dreaming up what the next phase will be, what the seeds that you want to plant, they're being dreamed up in this time. And like Jody was talking about earlier, when we're talking about cycles, and watching the moon is such a reflection of seasons and cycles. As you walk through these phases and our descriptions of them, you can almost hear the pattern of a life lived from birth to death, and the exuberance and energy of youth, and the building phases, and the achieving phases, and you're middle-aged, and so on and so forth, and walking through a life cycle into a time where at the very end here now you're tired and you're ready to release into what is next. It's a birth and death cycle, really, if you're looking at the sort of the archetypal patterning behind it, which is a cool way to look at it. And the truth is, most of us aren't going to be able to have the time to pay attention to every single phase as it's happening. Key ones being the new moon and the full moon, really, as those culmination and starting points. If you are able to keep track of every phase in your chart, it is a fun thing to do. I have done it. I've spent a couple of months doing it, where I tracked every single phase and really felt into how I was feeling in my body and my heart and my soul and my mind during those times. And it can be a really, really cool thing to do. And you may not have time to track every phase throughout the month, every month of the year, but it's a fun thing to play with and to realize that our bodies are really in sync with something outside of our conscious awareness a lot of times when it comes to these things. So
yeah, if you think we're made of mostly water, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ocean is controlled by the moon phases. So that is kind of mind-blowing when you look at the big picture and you think, well, what's the big deal? But really, the moon phases just remind us that life is cyclical and everything has a cycle and a pattern, like we mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah, if the moon can take the entire ocean and pull it away from the planet and then allow it to release back, then you're crazy to think that it's not having some effect on you, being, like you said, a large percentage water in our bodies. We are reacting to this whether we know it or not. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is the moon phases in your natal chart. So we all have a moon in our natal chart. It's in a specific sign and house, but also you were born in a certain phase of the moon. And it really kind of is, there's a soul imprint or like a karmic signature behind the moon phase that you were born under. And it's deeper than just personality. It's kind of like part of the soul assignment, if you will. The new moon, if you were born under a new moon. Oh, and to find how to calculate this in your chart, you can do it visually, or you can go to a website like AstroSeek. There is a moon phase calculator, or you can just type in your birth information and it'll tell you what moon phase you were born under. But if you want to look at your chart by do it yourself, you're going to find the sun. And then you are going to start counting in a counterclockwise direction, or think of following the houses in numerical order, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's we're counting counterclockwise. So find the sun and you start counting degrees counterclockwise until you reach the moon. And that is the degree that you calculate to That will tell you which one of these phases you were born under. If your moon is from 0 to 45 degrees ahead of the sun, then you were born in a new moon phase. And the archetype of this is the living symbol or the seed bearer. You're here to begin. This lifetime is about planting something new, even if you don't know what it will become yet. You are the sprout breaking ground. You are a soul that's at the very start of a journey. I think of like the fool in the tarot. It's you are setting out, you are brand new. And so there's a lot of vitality and excitement and energy and curiosity with this moon phase. It's experimental, raw, untamed. You may feel like you're always searching for your identity, direction, or clarity because again, you have this very fresh start energy. So you are on a search, but you're really not meant to have a map. You are here to explore. So you're meant to trust the fire inside and begin even without the map. People with this moon phase, they have a lot of passion, intuitive drive, and deep instinct. You may feel moody or restless if others try to box you in. There's, again, that kind of that youthful exuberance, like, don't tell me what to do. You need space to create, explore, and start over again and again. It's going to be about beginnings are going to be a theme in your life. I'm going to start this thing and then this thing and this thing. And you're just trying to experiment and figure it out. You're learning to trust yourself even when no one else gets it. There's a real like following your intuition and where the soul leads, where the gut leads. You don't need certainty, just courage. Completion isn't the point. Creation is. Some shadows to watch would be immaturity, impulsiveness, or obsession with novelty, specifically because again, we're going to talk about how you can sort of picture walking through a life from birth to death through these phases. And so the possibility for impulsiveness or immaturity, you're thinking youthful, very young, childlike. But with this one, there's that childlike curiosity as well. So that is the new moon phase. And then from 45 to 90 degrees, if your moon is in that section, you were born in the waxing crescent phase. And this archetype is the extremist or the initiate. So if you think the extremist, think about a teenager, right? Or that young exuberance. Think of like the young warrior headed off to war with like a lot of gusto and not a lot of maturity to follow it. There's an extreme sort of energy behind that. But your soul has emerged from darkness with a fierce need to prove, define, and become. There's tension between who you were and who you want to be. Building momentum. There's an inner sense that you must succeed, must evolve, must be more than what came before. You carry a very pioneering spirit. Also the feeling that you're not enough yet, but will be when you finally reach the next level. So it can be very easy to be judgmental of yourself. Like, I haven't reached it yet. I'm not enough yet. The emotional energy behind this is your emotions are tied to movement and progress. You may swing between hope and defeat based on your progress. Stillness can feel threatening unless you're consciously cultivating safety there. So the archetype here really reminds me of Martian energy, that Mars or Aries, fire and impatience. But the core lessons would be persistence is sacred, but so is surrender. Learn to trust timing, let things unfold. You don't have to fight your way into your worth. Some shadows here would be overexertion, martyrdom, isolation. You are not alone. It might feel like you're a solo warrior on your journey, but you are not alone. The invitation for you from your soul is to let your fire be guided, not just fueled. Point yourself in a direction and be open to advice and wisdom from people that you trust. Because with that youthful exuberance, just even one great seed of wisdom planted from someone that you trust can be really helpful for your direction. If you were born in the first quarter phase, that is the archetype of the crusader or the rebel. So the essence here is you are a soul of action and obstacles exist to be overcome. You're here to create structure from chaos and turn crisis into clarity. So there's a battle between the inner world and the outer reality. You feel compelled to act, fix, and build, often without pause. You may attract conflict, not because you seek it, but because your soul is testing your commitment. Your emotional energy is charged, active, urgent. You may feel most alive in the midst of friction or challenge. The core lessons here are about Action is sacred when it comes from the heart. Struggle is not failure, it's alchemy. And you're allowed to rest. The world won't fall apart, I promise. Some shadows here would be you are in perpetual crisis mode. You are learning to differentiate between true battles and distractions. And your soul invitation is not every fire is yours to fight. Choose what matters. This placement reminds me of Don Quixote. I don't know how many of you are going to know that story or that reference, but it's sort of like the idea of like charging at windmills, even though like kind of like making problems out of things that maybe aren't even problems. Not everything has to be a fight. You're just kind of making stuff up. You know what I mean? That's what I picture with this one, because it is a very crusading spirit, and these people are such forces for good in the world, and we need them, but they need to point all of that energy in the proper direction. And again, all three of these kind of early ones are so youthful. There's a lot of wisdom in seeking advice from someone that you trust before you just go charging headlong. Okay, and then if you were born in the waxing gibbous phase, that's 135 degrees to 180 degrees, the archetype for you is the helper or the lover. You are love in motion. Your soul longs to serve, to perfect, to offer beauty and meaning to the world. You refine the dream. So after the building phase, your soul now prepares to offer what it's made, right? So we've been talking about building phases. Those first, you've planted the seed, and then there's action and building. And now you're preparing to offer what it is that you've created. This often shows up through partnership, collaboration, service, or artistry. You are emotionally attuned to others and often sense needs before they're even spoken. You're sensitive, loving, sometimes overwhelmed by perfectionism or unspoken pressure to help. So core lessons for you are you don't have to be perfect to be valuable. Love is not about sacrifice, it's about presence. Devotion begins with self-nourishment. And shadows to watch for are overgiving, codependency, or seeking identity in being needed. But your soul is inviting you into the knowing that you are already enough and to let your love flow freely without strings attached. And then the full moon phase, that's 180 to 225 degrees, you are the human being, the illuminator. So you are here to experience life in full color. Relationships, creativity, expression, these are your sacred tools. You're meant to be seen. The full moon is the absolute brightest, so you are meant to shine. This phase represents emotional fullness. You spent lifetimes seeking self and other. Now you're learning how to live in that tension. Fulfillment brings both joy and grief. You're here to integrate duality. So a lot of times with this one, like there is, it's a very much about life and death cycles. And you're really here to experience the full expression of everything that it means to be human, from grief to ecstatic joy. You came to be very much human being. So your emotional energy, high tides, you feel deeply and visibly. Life is a mirror. You constantly see yourself reflected in others. Your core lessons are to celebrate the moment. All things rise and fall, right? This too shall pass. Everything changes. Learn the art of presence. Nothing lasts forever. Authenticity matters more than image. Shadows to watch for would be emotional burnout, attachment to applause, or defining yourself by your roles. But again, the soul invitation is you are here to fully be human. Let the light and shadow dance together. You're here to experience it all. And if you were born in the waning gibbous phase, that's 225 degrees to 270 degrees, the archetype is the shaman or the truth teller. So you've lived the story and now you carry the wisdom. Your soul is here to teach, to heal, and to tell truth that transforms. This phase is about integration. You felt the highs and lows, and now your heart seeks meaning. You are the one who turns experience into wisdom, often drawn to healing arts, spirituality, and truth-telling. You're reflective, deep feeling, and sometimes heavy. There can be a heaviness with this placement. You may carry grief from others and the collective because you carry this inner wisdom, but you're seeing the big picture and both the light and the dark side of humanity. Your core lessons are your story matters. Share it with care. You are not here to save everyone, only to be honest. Teaching is healing for them and for you. Some shadows for you to watch would be martyrdom, bitterness, or identifying too much with wounds. And the invitation for you is to let what you've lived become a gift. You carry a lot of wisdom. And then the last quarter or second quarter, I wanted to jump in and say something about that, because if you're looking at the sky, the quarters are a little bit, they're misnamed because it's half. You're looking up and it looks like half of the moon is illuminated. First quarter is when the first half of the moon is illuminated. Last quarter or second quarter is when the opposite side of the moon is illuminated. And so it always threw me off. I was like, why is it called a quarter? But the second quarter is from 270 degrees to 315 degrees. And the archetype here is the pilgrim. You are between stories. You're releasing the old, but hearing the call of the new. This is a phase of reevaluation and realignment. So you no longer belong to the world you built. Your soul is craving authenticity. This phase carries the spiritual weight of the crone, the elder, or the sage. You are nostalgic, raw, tender. There's both wisdom and loss in this phase. This is someone who is born an old soul. Your core lessons are letting go as a spiritual act, release as a spiritual act. Truth doesn't always feel good, but it's holy. You're here to honor truth, no matter what that looks like. Some shadows for you to watch out for would be withdrawal, resentment, or cynicism. Because again, you understand the fullness of this human life, and it can be hard not to be exhausted by that. So, wanting to withdraw or being cynical about life can be some of the shadows here. Truly, you are here to carry on what is essential and to hold that wisdom like the wise elder for others. And then finally, the waning crescent from 315 to 360 degrees. This is the archetype of the mystic, the dreamer, and the soul weaver. So you are preparing for rebirth. Your soul is at the edge of completion. This is a life of closure, vision, and surrender. This is a sacred resting phase. You've been many things in many lives by the time your soul chooses to be born under this phase. Now the work is spiritual. You're called to dream, to bless, and to dissolve. You're emotionally, you are kind of otherworldly, intuitive, sensitive, possibly cynical. That's a shadow energy. You may need more solitude than others to recharge, because there's an echo here of that 12th house energy, that Pisces energy, that ending energy. It needs a lot of solitude and rest and going within. Core lessons for you would be rest is sacred. You're not here to do, but to be. And surrender is strength. Shadows to watch out for you would be disconnection, escapism, or apathy. Your soul invitation is to let go. You're closer to the divine than you know, because this is the closest phase to complete surrender into oneness with the divine again. To sum up, the moon doesn't just reflect light, it reflects you. These phases are deeply personal. And I find when I'm doing a chart reading that when I get to the moon phase, it kind of sums up the entirety of the chart. It sums up sort of the life story. I also want to say there's not a hierarchy of good to bad with these, because you might think someone with a new moon phase or a waxing crescent, like at the early phases, like, oh, they're just immature. They're a young soul. They don't know what they're doing. And the later phases being like a soul that's been through a lot and knows a lot. And truly, I don't know if it's quite that linear in the way of thinking. You can carry a lot of wisdom and still be in those early moon phases. I don't know if we go through these archetypes over and over and over again through lifetimes, or if it's really just from beginning to end, those are all of our lives, and we just are in these phases in a linear fashion. I don't know if that's the way it works or not. So I don't think that if you're born in the later phases, you can thumb your nose at or look down on these little baby souls that were in the earlier moon phases. That's not the point here at all. These are just archetypal sort of filters to look through. And they truly do end up summing up the energy of the rest of the chart and all the other planets really beautifully. It's all so synchronistic. That's another reason why I love astrology.
Me too. Just another layer and way to understand ourselves.
So many beautiful ways to understand ourselves through astrology. And even if the moon phases was the only part of astrology that you were working with, you would gain so much from it, learn so much from it. So
I think that you can focus on what moon phase you were born in. You can also pay attention to the moon phases throughout the month and track it and track how you're feeling, or even picking certain moon phases to launch things or just start something new, even if you just start with the new moon or the full moon to do things. Embracing it and using it to our advantage is really what tracking the moon is all about.
yeah, we actually started this podcast during a new moon phase with that exact thing in mind. We wanted to plant the seed for something fresh. And I believe it was the new moon in Gemini, if I remember correctly, which is about communication and things like podcasting. So it really was quite synchronistic. And if you want to get even more advanced, before we wrap up, I just wanted to throw in there too, if you are advanced enough in astrology to understand progressions and your progressed chart, you can actually also look at the progressed moon phase that you are currently in, which tells you a bit about the cycle that you are in. In our lives, we move through all 8 of these moon phases over 30 years, a 30-year span. So think 30 days goes through all the cycles in a month. 30 years goes through all the cycles in our progressed chart. So it kind of reflects whole years of your life and what sort of energy you are in as it progresses. But that's for our more advanced listeners who understand progressed charts. We will get to that at some point.
I just wanted to add in another reference. If you're looking to find out what moon phase you were born during, you can also go to yourmoonphase.com and they have a little calculator that you can put your birth date into, and it will even give you a little description of what each one means.
Oh, perfect.
Is another
That's easy.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, folks, we will chat at you again in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. And if this episode resonates with you, please share it. And don't forget to like and follow us so you're notified when we release our next episode.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us under the stars today. We hope you're leaving feeling inspired, grounded, and more connected to your inner truth.
And if you loved this episode, we would be so grateful if you would subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone you love.
If you're ready to explore your soul's path through psychological, evolutionary astrology, and personal astrological coaching, you can find Mari at yoursoulpurposeastrology.com or follow her on Instagram and Facebook at Your Soul Purpose Astrology.
And if you're ready to illuminate your birth chart and explore how essential oils can support your emotional and energetic alignment, you can find Jody at earthandskyessentials.com or at Earth and Sky Essentials on Facebook and Instagram.
And remember, your soul is always guiding you.
The magic starts within.